Hi, I'm Paul Dayton, and I'm the author of Correcting Our Financial Miseducation. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about, well, some of the material in my book. I'll just give you a little taste for it, something you might expect if you decide to buy the book and give it a read. A major topic of the book is the New Deal. The fact that there is the words New Deal are attached to a current piece of legislation, and that does not spell instant political suicide, is evidentiary of a massive information deficit for anybody to regard the New Deal as anything but the great failure of socialism. Is evidentiary of a tremendous wealth of ignorance about the facts. The cure for ignorance is, of course, education, and education just comes down to information. So that's what my book is about. It's pretty much just lays out all the information and says this is what happened. So a couple of tidbits about the New Deal, and in particular the green portion, that is the agricultural portion of the New Deal. We'll talk about one of the programs they did, which was the Agricultural Administration, the AAA. So the Agricultural Adjustment Act was enacted in 1933 when Roosevelt took office in March. Now, one of the things that this legislation did was it fixed prices. So this removes the price mechanism from the market, interfering with the free market, which is already a huge mistake. Now, not only did it fix prices, but it fixed prices to previous year's production, the year of 1910. Now, this year was abnormally high in terms of farm prices. The reason this was done, presumably, was to ingratiate Roosevelt to the farmers. Hey, look what I'm doing for you, right? I'm making sure that you'll get paid a lot of money. But the problem with that, of course, is that it means that the population in the United States all have to pay artificially high prices for their farm products. Everybody needs to eat. And so it raised prices on the entire nation to benefit, the minority of farmers. A case of the special interest group taking precedence over the general interest of the country, something crucial to socialist legislation that occurs throughout the New Deal and will be very familiar to the ears of listeners today. This is still a huge problem in our country. It's one of the worst legacies, the most cancerous legacies of the New Deal. So another thing this AAA did was it paid farmers not to farm on portions of their land. Now, during this time, first of all, the idea behind this, paying farmers not to farm on portions of their land, it also paid them to destroy crops and kill animals. Not kill animals for the slaughter for sale, but just literally just waste the animals. The reason it did these things, presumably, was to try to increase prices by creating a shortage, right? But since they were already fixing prices, the laws of supply and demand don't really apply. So in this case, all paying people to produce less created was shortages, accompanied by already high prices. Which of course is brilliant, right? So now something else that this paying farmers not to farm portions of their land actually did, though, was to displace what were called sharecroppers and tenant farmers. And what these people were they rented spaces from farmers who had lots of farmland. And these sharecroppers or tenant farmers would farm the lands. They owned their own business, but they rented the farmland. It's akin to a business today somebody who rents a store or leases a store in a strip mall or a plaza someplace. They're in business for themselves. They own their business, but they rent the place in which they do that business. And this was just the same thing with farmers. So what that did was it increased unemployment. It made those people unemployed. It threw them out of work during a time when unemployment was already a major problem. Again, the great failure of socialism strikes again, right? Brilliant, brilliant thinking. One of the keys to socialism is they think about it today without a tomorrow, right? A cause without an effect. So this is what actually happened. Now, these measures, along with the myriad other measures implemented, interfering with the free market, produced, not surprisingly, massive shortages of food and a dependency upon imports. So The imports of beef, for example, in 1934, the United States imported 130,000 pounds of beef. In 1935, that number skyrocketed to 7.5 million pounds of beef imported. Remember, imports are bad, right? We're dependent on other countries, raises and imports are bad because we're dependent on other countries as opposed to making our own products, being self-sufficient, and selling our stuff to them. So increases are bad. Another example is butter. In 1934, the United States imported 500,000 pounds of butter. In 1935, the number was 22 million pounds. And again, in the case of raw cotton, 7 million pounds of raw cotton were imported in 1934, but 36 million pounds of raw cotton were imported in 1935. With all of the hunger and the shortages of food that were caused by Roosevelt's legislation and his socialist policy, something else that he did was he took taxpayer money and he hired a propaganda department to take pictures of all the hungry people and the bread lines that he created and he perpetuated to broadcast all over the papers. In your mind's eye, you can probably think of images during the Depression of people standing in bread lines. Well, that's where those pictures came from. For this and much more details about this matter and many other topics, go to Amazon.com and buy Correcting Our Financial Miseducation by me, Paul Dayton, today. Thank you for your attention.